Welcome to the Ancestral Kitchen Podcast with Alison, a European town dweller in central Italy, and Andrea, living on a newly created family farm in Northwest Washington State, USA. Pull up a chair at the table and join us as we talk about eating, cooking, and living with ancient ancestral food wisdom in a modern world kitchen. Hey, Alison, good morning.
Hey, good afternoon, Andrea.
I guess we need to reverse our greetings, but so I'm pretty stoked to sit down and record today. And before we kick off, I just want to say, oh my word, huge thank you to the patrons, because we officially announced it on the podcast. You know, it only went out, an episode or two ago? I forget, but as of this recording time. So, I don't know. It's just so cool to think that there's people out there who love talking about ancestral food, love hearing about it, love learning about it, and want to help us get this message out to other people. And I'm really, really grateful for those patrons that are basically making this podcast happen. It's a huge deal.
Yes, so. Me too. I'm really been encouraged by the fact that it's not been out there for long. And yet people have stepped up and said, yeah, we like what you're doing and we want to help you continue doing it. And that feels so warm and encouraging, for sure.
Absolutely. And Alison and I, as our gratitude for you amazing patrons, and really as a thank you from all the listeners, because I know all the listeners are grateful to the patrons for making this show up in our phones. We are just working on all the extra little bonus content that we can, just to say thank you for you making this happen. So make sure you check that private podcast feed. We are kind of just throwing up extra content as we create it. So you might see some unscheduled, unexpected little goodies drop in there. So just go ahead and enjoy that. Yeah.
It's fun. It's been fun to do some extra bits. Another excuse to just add some more and talk some more.
There's just so much that needs to be shared and discussed and talked about. There's a lot that we want to start opening conversations with farmers and home cooks and everybody who's involved in this world. So it's really great to have that Patreon feed to be able to just put the extra content up for people to enjoy. So thank you again. Alison, this is going to be a fun episode talking about the notes I sent you said, who's been looking in my fridge? Because we just wanted to talk about what is literally in our refrigerators right now. I love hearing homesteaders and, home preservers talk about their larders and their pantries all the time, but nobody really talks about walking in the kitchen, opening their refrigerator and looking at what's on the shelf right this instant.
I'm kind of nosy about fridges. I like it when I go to people's houses. I like to just have a nose in their fridges. And obviously now everyone whose house I'm going to go to is going to be worried that I'm nosing in their fridge. But, I like nosing in people's fridge. And I figure, well, if I like it, other people might want to nose in my fridge. So let's open my fridge and show it.
I've posted a couple times, either in my stories or on my Instagram, just opened my refrigerator doors, snap a picture and post it. And for whatever reason, those posts are enormously popular. So I think you're right. You're not the only one. We all want to know what's going on in your fridge, because it's a real snapshot into an actual day in the life. Like, what is literally happening at this moment, versus, hey, here's a cute Instagram picture of, a meal I prepared. That's all well and good. But what is happening on the day-to-day basis? That's what we want to know. So before we head down that road, I want to know if you had lunch yet.
Yeah, I've had lunch. We had some cow's heart, which we cooked at the weekend in the slow cooker. My favorite way of doing heart.
Yes.
And there was just a big chunk in the fridge. I froze some too, because it freezes extremely well.
Good.
But we got a big chunk in the fridge, so we're working our way through that. So I had some cold sliced cow heart with some cabbage from our local market, which I just boiled straight. It's quite a light cabbage, so it was It was really not too strong, nicely flavoursome. And some sourdough spelt bread, which we spread with our home rendered lard, which comes from the same farm that the heart came from. It has pigs and cows there and others, but both of those. And then some sauerkraut and some fermented garlic on the side.
Ooh, that sounds really good. Do you ever make like herbed or salted lard? Do you ever mix things into that before you spread it?
Not yet. I've seen people do that, but I haven't tried it. I do sometimes put lard on bread and then put salt on top of it. But that's not as posh as kind of putting herbs or things like that in it. I might get to doing that one day, but I think our effort goes into actually rendering the lard, because it's a big kind of all-day process, and then finding the space in the fridge and the freezer for it. Which you'll see when you get to my list of fridge. It's quite low in there. It's quite hard to shut the door sometimes.
Can't wait.
And then after that, I just love pastured pigs that have been out and treated really well. The lard that you get from them is just incredible. It's just wonderful. And to have it on bread, on homemade sourdough bread, I kind of feel like I don't need anything else.
Yeah. I have not seen people mix herbs or salt in, but when you always say you spread it on, it just made me think of butter, and some people mix herbs in. But
what about breakfast and you?
What? I have not had breakfast yet. I did eat a hard-boiled egg because I just needed some kind of calories in me. But I can tell you what I ate last night. It was amazing.
Okay, go on then.
And I made just a simple lentil stew. And it's just, I knew I wanted to make lentil stew today or yesterday. So I had gone to the farm stand and got celery, because that was I feel like you need that in lentils. But so I had celery, onion, carrots, and I sauteed it in a little bit of lard that we rendered. And then, I threw in, I had a half a gallon of bone broth from making or cooking one of our roosters. And then I had, I threw in some green peas and some brown lentils and a little bit of salt. And I think that was it. And
so did you soak all your lentils before?
I have gone back and forth on soaking them. Sometimes I feel like when I soak them, they just turn into paste when I cook them. I don't know if I'm doing something wrong. So I didn't soak them.
No,
and they still cooked up so quickly. I don't know. Are you supposed to soak lentils? I don't know.
I do. Yeah. I don't know about the supposed to. I do because I seem to think it goes down better. But you're right. They do tend to cook up into a mush, because the lentils that we have are have the hulls taken off. The Italian word came to mind, but I had to struggle to find the English way of saying that. And so because of that, they disintegrate really quickly. Yeah. But we kind of don't mind the mush. So
that's true. I have also done like half soaked and half not to try to get the texture that I'm going for. So I don't know. I flip-flop back and forth, but I didn't soak these ones. And oh man, we served it over some rice, and it was just perfect. Honestly, it was so delicious and filling, and it tastes like I worked so hard on it. And I think it's just because of that amazing bone broth. It is so thick, it's almost like Jello dropping into the pot when I poured it in, and it just has so much flavor in it. So simple, fast. Well, I guess not.
I do have some lentils soaking on the side to be cooked tomorrow. They're in water now. And I often like to put turmeric and kind of cumin and that kind of spices in it as I cook.
Perfect.
But if I do have bone broth to hand, I'll throw that in, which just gives it that wonderful flavour.
There's just something missing when you don't use bone broth. That tastes just, I don't know, like you can spice it up, but it's always a little like wateriness to it somehow.
Yeah.
Versus just the thickness of depth. Yeah. Okay, so I want to know what's in your fridge. I'm really curious. And
curious, not nosy. That's a nice way of saying it.
I'm nosy and curious. But I'm also just excited because just every time we talk, you're an education for me. So I know that you telling me what is your normal is going to be really, really great information for me. So
vice versa, for sure.
Great. Perfect. And hopefully this will be interesting for the listeners. And maybe we can get you guys to, oh no, I think I just bumped the microphone again. Maybe we can get you guys to post a picture of the inside of your fridge and maybe tag Ancestral Kitchen Podcast so we can see what's in your fridge. That would be so cool. All right. So Alison, why don't you read me off? I know you made a list of what's in your fridge. Why don't you read off the list and then I'll read off mine and then we'll go back and pick through them a little bit.
Okay. That sounds like a good structure. Okay. So we're off. I've got quite a long list. We've got some organic unpasteurized rice miso and some organic unpasteurized barley miso. Both of those I bought. There's a Rye Sourdough starter. There's some fresh ginger. There's a little jar of homemade facial moisturizer, which I use. There's ghee, there's ground linseed, there's olives, capers and butter. All three of those are bought. There's a millet sourdough starter. There's some lemon juice that we just squeezed. There's beer yeast, which is on a grain inside a container. There's some milk kefir grains. There's some mustard. There's fermented cod liver oil. There's some jars of homemade wild beer, some bottles of homemade wild beer. There's 2 containers of fermented garlic. There's some Sowans, which is a liquid of a Scottish oat ferment. There's some eggs. There's a jar of homemade casein paint binder, which I'm not going to imbibe. That's an artistic paint binder that I use to make paint with natural pigments.
Okay, we're going to need to link your art site because I don't know if people realize that you're an artist. I mean, if they look at your Instagram, they'll instantly figure it out. But we're going to need to link your art website.
I think there's going to be quite a few links in the show notes.
Probably.
Then we've got chocolate. So I've got some homemade 100% cacao chocolate that I went from bean to bar. And then some 95-ish% cacao chocolate, which was made by us for my son. Then there's a jar hanging around at the back with some flower buds, which I picked from dandelions and fermented last year, trying to make kind of like some capers, because capers are flower buds. But I haven't actually eaten them yet because at the last minute I wasn't sure that it was exactly the right species of dandelion and I was a bit worried. So I'm kind of putting out vibes for some foraging expert to come towards me and tell me, show me a load of other stuff, but tell me in that process whether these capers are actually edible. So they're at the back of the fridge. I couldn't bring myself to throw them away. There's some leftover mutton stew. There's some spent beer grain, which we used to make beer, and now I'm going to make that into a bread. Put it in my bread. There are some rolled oats that I've fermented and are ready to cook. There's some ground whole grain barley that we ground at home that again has fermented. And that one, the oats that I just mentioned are going to be cooked into porridge. The whole grain barley is going to be cooked into a polenta. There are 2 jars of home rendered lard, some cooked lentils. There's Boza, the probiotic millet drink that I make, and a Boza starter. There's a ginger bug. There's some sauerkraut. There's some sediment of rye from beer making, which I will cook into porridge. There's something called swats, which is the secondary part of the Sowans Scottish oat ferment. This is the kind of the crumbs. That, again, I make into a porridge.
Yum.
Then from the local growers market, we've got red currants, apricots, tomatoes, lettuce, plums, beets, the greens from the beets that I've chopped off the top, ready for cooking, carrots, cabbage, lemons, radish. And last but not least, there are some fagottelli, which are an Italian kind of meat speciality that we might get to. And that's it. And the door just about closes.
That's it, huh? That's all?
Yeah, that's all. I'm very good at organising spatially.
I see that. That's amazing. I have so many questions. So I really can't wait to go back through that. Let me spit out my list real quick. And then we'll go back over that. Cause I have a lot. We need to discuss this. Okay. We have a lot of overlap, but a lot of difference too. Okay, I've got some dried starter cultures. Leslie, if you're listening, those are yours. They're just waiting to get mailed to one of our listeners who's in a different country and wasn't able to get starters by mail. Okay, there's garlic dill kraut, bread and butter pickles that we made, sriracha that I made in 2014. Fermented foods.
When my son was born.
Yeah, it's aged. Some maple creamer that I made. I think I have a link to that recipe I can put in the show notes. Maple syrup, 6 bottles of water kefir, some escabeche, pickled beets, raw milk, some store-bought sour cream, a jar of sourdough start backup. Then I found another bottle of water kefir. I was making this list. Some soured cream, so just raw cream that went sour in the jar, half a gallon of yogurt, some homemade applesauce, a jar of 20 egg whites. Don't even remember what I was making that I needed all those yolks. Pickled jalapenos, some homemade truffles that Colleen made, jar of turkey fat, another bottle of water kefir, organic cold brew, another homemade hot sauce, not fermented, just canned, homemade apple jelly, pumpkin oatmeal casserole that's waiting to go in the oven and get baked, leftover oatmeal casserole, leftover pumpkin custard, store-bought organic miso, turkey noodle soup, fermented mustard that I made almost a year ago. It's getting down. It's moved into a smaller jar and a smaller jar. It's getting whittled down. Vanilla beans, tomato corn salsa that we made last year, store-bought butter, another jar of sauerkraut, spelt sourdough, some eggplant sotto olio, fermented carrots, a rye starter, lemon juice and lime juice that we bought like already juiced, a jar of baba ganoush we made and froze a ton last year, some red kimchi that Colleen made. So good. We're running out of that, but it's delicious. Some kefir grains that I stuck in the fridge overnight because I didn't have time to put milk in them. A separated quart of cream, some carrot salad, leftover tomato sauce from making some homemade pizzas. I found another jar of escabeche. I guess I opened 2. Some store-bought carrots from the farm stand, and also some celery, store-bought cheese, block of cheese from the store, and a bottle of store-bought orange juice. Eggs, I have a drawer where I put boxes of eggs that I date, and then they have to sit there and age before I can boil them. A bunch of supplements, just one drawer with Ningxia Red, Ningxia Nitro, probiotics, Mindwise, milk thistle, magnesium drops, fermented cod liver oil, and mineral drops. Some animal rennet, homemade CBD muscle rub, a little maple drink infusion that I made. Okay, now we're up to 3 gallons of powdered eggshells, cooked lentils, leftover butter frosting from Jacob's birthday. I don't know what I'm going to do with it. And then when you read your list, by the way, after I did my list, I realized I left out an entire shelf and 2 drawers. I forgot,
No.
but they had kind of similar things as you, some fermented garlic, some fermented coffee, and a bowl of cracklins and a ginger bug. So yeah, there we go. That's what's in the fridge.
So some overlap, but actually quite a lot of very different things.
Yeah, which is funny because we are in 2 different states. Wow. 2 different countries. So you can kind of see a little regionality, but also a lot of similarities. So does that mean our taste preferences are the same, or is it because we're both pulling from the same kind of heritage history? I don't know. I'm interested to see why we have so much overlap.
So where do you want to start digging into these?
Well, I actually want to hit on something on yours, right? I'm going to actually start. Okay. I have yours written down in front of me, so I'm going to start at the top. First of all, I guess I didn't realize miso could be made from different things. You said you have rice miso and a barley miso. I had only ever heard of a soy miso.
Oh, wow.
So I did not even know.
when I first got into miso, I didn't really know anything about how it was made, and I saw the word soy in it, and I thought, oh, I'm not sure with that.
Yeah.
But obviously it's been ridiculously fermented.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can make miso out of virtually anything. I mean, some people, I've seen recipes online for making miso out of old bread. And I just, I really want to have a go at making miso, but it's a long process. You can make it short and then it's sweeter. But if you want it how I like it, you've got to ferment it for about a year. Mm-hmm. But generally I eat the barley one. I prefer that flavour. But I tried a rice one as well, just to see what I thought.
Seems like the rice would be a little more bland, is it, or no?
I don't know if it's a different company making it. So obviously the process may be different.
Yes,
but the rice one seemed darker when you look at it and just didn't have the aliveness of the barley one in my mouth. So I prefer the barley.
Miso is definitely one of those products I want to tackle one day. I just have not yet, but see, what I figure is soy is a plant, it's from nature. There has to be good versions of it somewhere. You know what I mean? Like, definitely. I don't want to demonize it because an industry has turned it into a genetically modified, unrecognizable product. So I don't want to be like, soy must never touch my lips, but it is one of those things that's virtually impossible for humans to digest, as far as I have ever read. And fermenting it for a year seems to be about one of the only ways to break it down enough that we can eat it.
There's some good recipes in the Wild Fermentation by Sandal Katz.
Yeah, there is.
So I think when I get to it, I'll probably start there.
Yeah, I think that's the first place where I realized, you can actually make your own miso. And if anybody has their water kefir drinking game going, we just mentioned wild fermentation, so you are taking a shot now. I don't think we've made it.
Water kefir. You keep your water kefir in the fridge. And we don't.
Yeah, you don't.
It's just like, wow, she keeps her water kefir in the fridge. No, we second ferment ours into the bottle.
Okay.
And the swing top bottle, put the lid on it, and then I put it back on the shelf with the first fermented stuff, and we go through 1 litre a day. So basically, we've got two bottles on the go and 2 jars on the go. And we just serve it room temperature. We don't keep it in the fridge. Do you keep yours in the fridge for a reason?
Well, I've exploded a jar of kombucha one time, and ever since then, I've kind of tended to stick my drinks in the fridge.
That's never happened to us.
So if I, that's nice, Alison. if I could be more organized, maybe to know that would have happened. But I have a disorder. I heard a podcaster refer to it as TPAD, time passage awareness disorder. Thank you, Dana White, if you are familiar with that. It's where I think it's been a day and it's actually been like 2 weeks.
It has happened in my life. Like, I thought my son was born yesterday. Was it? No, he was born 7 years ago. Was it 20 years ago?
Okay, maybe we are drinking too much water kefir. Okay, also, you said rye sourdough starter. I wanted to make sure everybody knows, Alison, you have a great link on making that.
Yeah, thank you. So I always keep my gluten sourdough starter because I've got a millet one as well. And my gluten one, I've just learned that rye works the best. And I keep it quite not very hydrated. So I don't keep it 100% hydration. I usually keep it around 65, 70 because it lasts longer that way and doesn't need refeeding. So I make a rye starter, which is 60 to 70% hydration. I don't really measure it anymore. But then I put that in the fridge and it will stay in the fridge without needing feeding for a week, sometimes 10 days.
Oh, that's great.
If I haven't used it by then, often I get it out for pancakes and, souring other stuff. But there's a link to how to produce a rye starter quite simply on my website, which we'll put in the show notes.
Yeah. That is great because I know a lot of people who want to start ferments that don't have access to, I just hit the microphone again. I'm really trying, listeners, to not hit the
Sit on your hands.
Sit on my hands. So anyways, I need to like hang it from the ceiling or something. But yeah, we'll link that in. I also know if I'm wondering, other people are going to wonder too, homemade facial moisturizer, is that just like a simple one item thing, or is there a recipe somewhere? Like, what is this all about?
That was an experiment that didn't go very well, but I'm still using it. I found a recipe, for a better word, online, and I got some local beeswax to use as the emulsifier, because you need emulsifier to get the fat, which I used almond oil, to mix with the water. So you don't just have, kind of neat fat that you're like slathering onto your face.
Yeah.
And in order to mix the two, you need an emulsifier. Yeah. And the first blog post that I read said beeswax. So my friend here has got bees and makes honey. So I asked her for some beeswax. She delivered the beeswax. After I could stop sniffing it, because it smells like the most amazing thing you have ever smelled.
Yeah.
I managed to bring myself to melt some down and make it into moisturizer. And it kind of didn't work. The water kind of came to the top. And so I went back and read more posts. And then I learned that actually beeswax is not a very good emulsifier, and you shouldn't be using it. You should be using these other emulsifiers. And I've never really got round, I haven't yet, to getting some other emulsifier and trying again. However, it still works as a moisturizer. It's just a bit thick. So I tend to put it on when I'm not particularly going out for the day, so I don't look like, I've got a massive greasy face.
Maybe like a bedtime moisturizer?
Yeah, it would be a good bedtime moisturizer. And it's really good for like your elbows, or if you've got a bit of dry skin because you've been out in the sun a bit too long, or kneeling on the floor doing something. Yeah. It's a nice kind of balmy feeling. Yeah. And it smells really nice. And I am using it.
Of course, you're like, I'm not wasting this.
Yeah, no, exactly.
We've made some salves, and I emulsified the fats with beeswax, and it made this amazing creamy consistency. So, like, I'm absolutely obsessed with it. So I wonder why. And I
just did something wrong because it was the first time. You see that I do make mistakes.
No, I guess so.
What about your CBD muscle rub? Tell us about that, because that's a similar thing.
Well, my cousin made it for me, so I actually don't know how she made it. But she used, I think, goat milk or something, and like an extract, like a CBD extract. So it's really nice, but I don't know how she made it. So unfortunately, I can't give you any details.
It sounded really interesting. And, always when there's kind of some muscle rub involved, I'm in. If you want to rub me with something and help my muscles, then that's fine.
Right. That is something also that I guess we should mention. You'll notice in a lot of like non-commercial homes, or like, I don't know what the word is, ancestral. Everybody lives in an ancestral home because you have ancestors, but you'll see non-food things in the fridge. So because we're making a lot of things at home that don't have preservatives in them, and the way you make your facial moisturizer shelf staple is you put a ton of toxic preservatives in it. So that's probably something you might notice in some people's fridges, weird little homemade things. Okay. Yeah. All right. I do have another question. I just want to hit on this since you were talking about the rye sourdough starter. So you have the rye sourdough starter and the millet sourdough starter. Can you just talk about the difference between those two for a second?
Yeah, of course. So the rye sourdough starter is made of 100% rye. So it's a gluten grain. It's got gluten in. And I use it for my rye breads, and I use it for my spelt breads. I don't make a separate spelt starter usually. When I make spelt bread, I use a rye starter.
Why?
The millet starter. Go ahead.
Why not a spelt starter? Why do you not do a spelt one?
Because I really like rye starters. I think they tend to rise more than spelt does.
I agree.
I like what they impart. So I just stick with it simple. I like it simple.
Yeah. Cool.
The millet. So millet is a grain. It's obviously gluten-free, but it's also lectin-free. And my son is, to a greater or lesser extent, more on the greater side, lectin sensitive. So I started that in order to be able to make breads that were lectin free. And so I used that to make millet and sorghum sourdoughs. And I also use it where we're fermenting perhaps some millet or some sorghum into a porridge or into a polenta bread. I'll use that as the start in the mix. So the entire recipe is lectin-free and gluten-free. So I keep those two separate. They're kind of similar thing to maintain. The millet doesn't go as kind of gloopy as the rye one does. You don't have to put as much water in it. And the millet one tends to last a bit longer as well. But they're just two jars, and I just, I keep an eye on both of them and use them for separate purposes.
Do you date your jars like the day you last fed them or whatever, or do you just kind of eyeball it?
Just wing it. Yeah. I just, I kind of, sometimes I'm using them kind of every day, every other day. So by the time I've spooned everything out of it, it's kind of, there's a little bit left and I have to make it. And I've used it before it's gone. I needed a feed anyway. And other times I just, once or twice a week, I'll think, oh, hang on, how long's that starter been in there? And I'll take the lid off, smell it. If it smells really vinegary, then I'll refresh it and use the discard in something that day, and then pop it back in the fridge. Once I had an issue with the top of the rye starter going mouldy when we moved, but that really was because we were kind of moving and homeless for a period of weeks. And so
so were you not feeding it?
Give a stable. Yeah, I wasn't able to give it the stable thing, and I kind of forgot about it because we were in crisis and moving houses. Yeah. But in the end, all I did with that was I looked at it and I could see the mould wasn't green or black or red. Yeah. It was just this white stuff on the top. So I took 95% of it off, maybe even more than that. Yeah. And then just started again with what was at the very bottom, and it was fine.
Yeah. Okay. I feel less bad about myself because I've done that too. Of course, I really actually don't get to feel less bad about myself because I wasn't moving or anything like that. It just molded. So, but
these things happen. You've got animals to look after.
Yeah. I do remember moving one time, and my friend was driving with me, and she was laughing because we were sitting in the parking lot, and I was like on the hood of my car with little bags of flour mixing sourdough starter. And she was like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "This is my child. I must keep it alive."
Yes. When we came to Italy, we brought the sourdough starter with us. Oh, man. I have to keep the sourdough starter. It's coming all the way from Cornwall to Italy.
It's like our thread. I was so paranoid that I was going to kill it because it was the first one I had started. I had kept it going for a while, and I really wasn't sure if I could start another one. I didn't really trust myself. And I had bought pineapple juice to start it. And I was like, I don't even know if I'll be able to afford pineapple juice again. So I was like, I have to keep this alive. It was kind of funny. And then also, I'm just looking at your list, and you said beer yeast on the grain. So do you mean you have a jar of grain with beer yeast sitting on?
Yeah. So what my beer knowledge is developing literally hour by hour almost. And previously I've been making beer to a recipe of Sandor's in his World Fermentation. There we are, another mention of that. And in that I use sourdough starter because that's what the recipe said. And it makes a very sour beer. And I'm starting to learn about beer starters and how the bacteria produce the sour flavour, the yeasts produce fermentation without the sour flavour. So I wanted to experiment. Instead of recreating a sourdough starter every time I make a beer, I thought, well, I've got all this yeast in the bottom of the beer that must be alive. People put, like we've talked about on the kitchen tables, our Patreon podcast, people used to put bits of wood in the beer and then hang them out to dry afterwards and then use them as the starter next time. So I thought, well, there must be yeast all over these grains in the bottom of this beer. So I decided to do a little test. And I put a section apart the last time we made beer. And instead of putting sourdough starter in it, I put some old grains in from the previous batch, like a back slot. And the beer was nice and it wasn't as sour as the previous batches. So I thought, okay, I prefer this beer like this. So now what I've done is I've kept a big chunk of the grains that were in the beer from the last batch, which have that yeast on them, which is more developed than the sourdough starter I put in neat at the beginning of the process. And I'm going to use that to inoculate the next batch of beer and try doing it without any sourdough starter. And see what happens. So,
okay, so interesting that you're doing that, because I over the last couple of weeks, we watched this docu-series called Tudor Monastery Farm. I don't know if you've seen it or heard about it.
No, I haven't. No.
It's kind of cute, and they just sort of like they dress up in Tudor clothes, and they kind of show this is what it would be like for living in a year on a Tudor monastery farm. And I thought there was lots of little things on it where I thought, oh, Alison would love that. Or, oh, Alison talked about that in the beer book, and she had a little like pot of what I think she called it wort. I forget exactly what it's called.
Part of beer making.
Yeah. Okay. So she said this is some of my kind of like dredges from making beer last time, and I'm going to use it to kickstart this batch. Or, she said it in a kind of British way, but that was the essence of what she said. So that makes me think of when you said beer yeast on the grain, that
it's the same thing.
Yeah.
The same thing. I want to have my own culture. I don't want to have to make a sourdough starter. I'm making beer every time. I want to reuse the yeast. I mean, because they're adapted to my environment and my grain that I'm using. And I'm really excited to be able to just make it kind of out of nothing.
Yeah. Well, for the patrons who are listening, if you listen to Kitchen Table Chat, I think it was number 3, where Alison, where you read those heretical rules of beer making. Like, just remember that this is not it is a complex scientific process, but it's not a complex scientific process in the sense that this is just something that is supposed to be a part of your daily or your weekly routine, making, what is it? Whatever we drink, like 2 gallons or 1.5 gallons of beer a day or something like that, and so it doesn't need to be, if you feel like it's really hard, we're probably overthinking it, because it should be simple enough that in the relatively unsanitary conditions, you can slop your ingredients in and end up with a, delicious drinkable product.
Yeah, I agree.
Can
I ask a question about your fridge now?
Yeah, no, I'm just going to say,
all these questions are like,
I'll link, there's a like, blog or whatever that the Tudor Monastery people did about each episode. I'll link that in the show notes. Okay, go, fire, shoot.
So first of all, I wanted to ask you about your casseroles, because it seems like there's been a lot of things around your casseroles recently. On Instagram, I've been seeing pictures. And I see you've got a leftover one, 2 leftover things, and 1 waiting to bake. And there's pumpkin and custard involved.
Right. So
I wanted to ask how that works, or how that's working for you at the moment.
Yeah. Okay. So what it is kind of developing for me, I mean, obviously only a couple of weeks into really using breakfast casseroles, but what I've been finding is I kind of have my days mapped out. Like, we have a rhythm that we follow. And this one gap in the day that keeps not working, this huge chunk, is kind of breakfast, because I like to get out and do the animal chores, and then come in, but then I'm starting breakfast, and even the relatively fast breakfast, you still feel like you're standing there for a while. And then by the time I sit down and eat, it's been quite a bit since I got up. So yes. Hi. So what I've been finding is, if I make these breakfast casseroles, and I'll link to the blog where I found them, but when I make these breakfast casseroles, they sit and basically ferment overnight. And then the next morning, I slide it in the oven, cold oven, turn the oven on, and then I go out, do the animal chores. And then by the time I come back in, it's been the exact amount of time for it to finish. The kids can set the table themselves either the night before. I'll have them do it when they do their evening chores, or they can set the table while I'm outside doing the animals. And then when I walk in, I basically pull it out and we sit down and immediately, like, we just wash hands and eat. And for whatever reason, that has been solving like, I've got 99 problems, and a late breakfast is like the root of them all. So this has been solving a lot of problems because we can jump straight to the next part of the day a lot faster. And because of the fact that like we're basically running the farm and we have several small businesses that we run out of our home, and I'm the adult on campus, like Gary's usually gone. So in fact, right now, every single morning he's gone. So it's incumbent on me to somehow make it happen and make the animals happen, and then anything business related happen, and then kids chores, kids school, household things. So kind of in a way, this was my mother's helper solution. So what we do is I mix up the recipe came from a mom with 9 kids. Okay. So it's more than we need. But what I do is I divide it into 3 pans. And then if I make a breakfast casserole one morning, like yesterday, I made the oatmeal casserole. So it made 3 pans. But then the next day, I can make a different breakfast casserole and divide it into 3 pans. And then I can flip flop them and rotate them over the week. You know what I'm saying? So I'm making breakfast twice a week, but it's providing all these different
whole week.
Yeah. And inevitably we don't end up finishing something someday or other. So then there's leftovers that pop up and I just, kind of toast them or make them into something else, So yeah, we'll see how it goes. So far it's working.
It sounds like it's really, you've created a routine around it, which serves you, which is really important. And it's kind of similar to, you've got those casseroles. I've got kind of leftovers from the beer. I've got oats that have been fermenting for ages. I've got other stuff that's in there, and that I will cook up as porridge, which is a bit more kind of manual. But it's a similar idea of just having it in the fridge, and then it's available for you.
Yeah.
So do you drink your cold brew coffee with that when you have your breakfast?
Sometimes. I don't always drink coffee.
You've got cold brew in the fridge as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't always drink coffee, but sometimes I like to have coffee with breakfast. And then I also make coffee for my friend who I usually get milk from. Her cows aren't in milk right now, but I'm still bringing her milk because she still has to take care of the cows, or I'm still bringing her coffee, So whenever I meet her to pick up milk, usually I'll drop off a couple little homemade things as kind of a thank you. So I try to make double.
We have in the morning, I thought about the coffee because when I was thinking about our routine with kind of making porridges or polentas in the morning, Rob has coffee in the morning. I don't drink coffee. He roasts his own green beans, as you know. So he roasts them like once a week, probably, and then he keeps them, and they're not roasted like you would find from kind of a commercial roaster at all. He has kind of learnt to do them, so they're kind of halfway between green beans and normal beans. And then he makes his coffee every morning, and he sits there drinking his coffee usually, and sometimes reading to Gable while I make the porridge. That often happens.
Yeah.
So we're kind of coffee in here, but also like you, a bit different. Not standard coffee.
Well, I feel like the cold brew. Part of the reason why I don't drink coffee often is because it could send me over the edge. It either, gives me anxiety or I start talking really fast, and we already know that I have problems with talking fast. So, so then it gets worse. And, but I've noticed, or shall I say, Colleen and Sabrina have noticed that when I drink hot coffee, they're like, what did you do? Because you're vibrating. So I feel like the cold brew is maybe a little less caffeine. I also like the flavor better. I feel like it's a little less acidic tasting. It's a little smoother, which is not to say that I don't also like a hot cup of coffee every once in a while, but I just prefer cold brew.
And the pumpkin custard that you're having with that breakfast, is that why you've got all those egg whites in the fridge? Because you used the egg yolks for the custard, or you kind of said you couldn't remember why the egg whites were in there.
No, I use the whole egg when I make the pumpkin custard. So I think maybe the eggs were from when I made that big batch of chocolate ice cream. I think that might be what it was from. I took all the yolks out for that. Honestly, the egg whites probably need to go to the chickens. I don't think they're probably a little bit old at this point. So, so that will maybe be chicken food, or I'll scramble them and give them to the chicks or something.
Yeah. I've got more questions for you. Should I fire, or do you want to fire?
Well, let me give you a question real quick. Okay, milk kefir grains. So I noticed we both had grains in our fridge. So I wanted to ask you, is that just like taking a pause in between making a batch, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we don't get milk as much as you do, because Rob has to run up the hill to get it and bring it down. And so when he's busy, he can't go and do it. And also we don't drink it as much because at the moment Gable doesn't drink milk.
Oh, okay.
So I don't make it as much because of that. Rob's due to go up there and get some more soon.
Yeah.
And then while we're not using them, sometimes I use the milk kefir grains to culture other types of milk. So I'll often do, we buy this product which is like a dehydrated coconut, and you make liquid of it. So it's not so kind of high on the shipping of, and packaging of all these kind of coconut milks. And I ferment that with milk kefir grains for my son. And then often we'll buy local milk, which is pasteurized, and just feed the kefir grains with it, and then get rid of the milk, because we don't drink pasteurized milk at all. But we want to keep those kefir grains fit. So we need to feed them lactose quite often. Yeah. So in the break, sometimes they're in pasteurized milk, and then they'll go in the fridge in water for a little while. And then hopefully soon we'll get some more raw goat's milk and pop them in there. So
yeah. And you
have
said
milk for me, so you probably got yours going.
Yeah, I just keep mine. Yeah, exactly. I have a milk refrigerator in the garage, so we didn't even get to that fridge. You mentioned, I think in our 5 cheapest foods podcast episode, that you sometimes strain out grains, suspend them in water, and freeze them to store. Yeah. So I did that with too. After you said that. Well, I just thought, let me have this backup in here. And I think I'm going to make another one too, just so that if somebody says, hey, do you have any grains for me? I could just hand them over that jar, have it ready to go.
You can do that with water kefir grains as well. I don't know if you heard Ellie put hers in the freezer. Ellie from Ellie's Every Day, who we interviewed a few episodes back. Yeah. And hers were in the freezer for 4 years.
Whoa.
And she got them out, and they still made water kefir.
Yeah, I think she did it.
So don't be afraid
about that, did she?
Yeah.
I think she did Instagram post on
that. We eat our spare water kefir grains though, so we never have any kind of to freeze.
Right.
We just eat
them. Okay, tell me how gross this is. I was really glad that I froze some. I can't wait for the bloopers episode. I froze some of the water kefir grains, and I was really glad that I did, because then the next day, I strained out my water kefir, put the grains into a clean jar, going out my kitchen. I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to make some, sugar syrup basically to put in it. Turned around, and the jar was like full of flies.
Oh, really? That quickly?
It literally in no time at all. Like fruit flies, like a ton of fruit flies. Wow. And all I could think about was maggots. So I was kind of grossed out. So I fed those to the chickens. So I need to go and take my frozen grains back out. And I guess I get to see if they work right now.
Yeah, hopefully they will.
Yeah. Because I didn't want to, ferment a bunch of eggs. That's what I was afraid would happen.
Yeah, no, I can understand that.
Yeah. Okay.
More questions for you. Okay.
All right. You hit me with one.
What are bread and butter pickles?
Oh, I don't know what the definition of them is. It's a recipe. This is bread and butter pickles. Maybe it's an American thing. They're really traditional over here. You see them, I'm looking right now. You see them on like grocery store shelves. You can buy them. And I never liked them growing up because they have sweetness to them. And I thought they were the grossest thing ever. And then one day I made a batch of them, and I made them kind of spicy, and I have loved them ever since. So They're just I slice them and I use like equal amounts cucumber as onions. So you get like tons and tons of this sliced, like thinly shaved onions, and it just is all so good. Let's see. One of the first recorded uses of the bread and butter pickle sandwich. Oh, it's a Depression era staple, so it is an American thing. They're sweeter, less vinegary. They apparently were first made in 1923.
And what do you eat? How do you eat them? How do you eat them?
You just pile them on like if you make sausages, you can, like if you do say sliced sausages, you can put the pickles on top, or if you make a sandwich, or if you have like a sausage in a bun, or my grandma told me that when I give her jars of them, she said she just eats them with a fork. They're so good. So yeah.
Lots of ferments before.
Yeah. I guess whatever way you want. These ones aren't fermented though. These are just like vinegar pickles.
They're vinegar pickles. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I might, if I can get my hands on some cucumber pickles this year, I would like to try my hand at making an actual lacto fermented bread and butter pickle. I don't know if traditionally, since it's a modern recipe, I don't know if they've ever been fermented, but I don't see why you couldn't ferment them. Yeah. Why not?
Nice.
Okay, then let me ask you a question. Do you guys take fermented cod liver oil like every day? Do you do that? Is it a thing?
We were taking it every day up until about 2 months ago, when we decided that we had to kind of a big hoo-ha, because we used to get it from England, and then the Brexit thing happened at the end of January, and then we couldn't get anything shipped from England because the shipping tax turned into an absolute nightmare, and no one could send any goods across Europe. So we found it difficult to source it. So we've actually gone down to having it every other day. Yeah.
Okay.
But that is basically the only supplement we will take as a family. And we have the green pastures one, the cinnamon tingle. And we'll take that every other day. I saw it on your list as well, I'm sure.
Yeah. Well, it's not been actually something we've done all the time. It's kind of not that it's new to us, but we've not ever really been consistent in taking it. So I was just curious how you guys.
Yeah, it's the thing we've been taking it since before Gabriel was born, I think. And for a while we had the butter oil as well, that is green pastures, but that is even more expensive than the fermented cod liver oil. And I really like to try and get as much nutrition from my food rather than from other sources. And so I'll go out of my way to nurture a food source to make it more nutritious.
Absolutely.
And hone my kind of relationship with food, so I'm not sabotaging what I'm doing by overeating or not eating properly and not caring. And I'd rather trust that the food that I'm eating gives me what I'll need, rather than go towards supplements, loads of supplements. But having said that, we are still having the fermented cod liver oil.
Yeah. Well, okay. I think every coastal, at least coastal, I suppose by lakes too, but every coastal society that I can think of, as far back as you can go, there's always some kind of fermented fish sauce. I mean, you guys your Romans had garum, you know?
Garum,
there's traditional fermented, like Salish fish sauce that people would make out here. I don't know if anybody makes any approximations nowadays. I feel like you kind of are on your own if you want fermented. And then of course, there's fermented fish sauce that we're all familiar with, from Korean dishes and things like that too. I just feel like everywhere there's fermented fish is just, it's a theme everywhere. And I posted on my Instagram, I think I posted it. Yeah, I posted it on my Instagram a couple of weeks ago. Just some reel that somebody had shared of archaeologists uncovering these urns of garum that had been preserved underwater since Roman times. I mean, they were fermented and they were still preserved underwater. I was like, wow, fermented food really lasts a long time. So
you thought your thing at the back of your fridge has been there for 7 years is old.
Yeah. Don't you want a tablespoon of that for your starter? But yeah, it just seems like it's a pretty ubiquitous thing, some kind of fermented fish. So maybe we'll get around to, fermenting fish one day. Yeah, lots of Scandinavian, different traditional fermented fish.
Yeah, definitely.
There's a Jewish traditional fermented fish. I don't know. It's everywhere. So there's got to be benefits to it. And there's got to be ways to get it other than just fermented cod liver oil. So we'll figure.
What about your supplements? I heard you list supplements that I didn't even recognize when you mentioned those.
Most of those supplements come from Young Living. So they kind of have like brand names,
Okay.
And then the milk thistle and the cod liver oil are just, I think Hannah left the milk thistle here when she was staying here because it's like a liver cleanser or something.
Yeah.
And whenever I was doing gaps, I kept like one eye, I would wake up and one eye would be bloodshot, like crazy bloodshot. And I wouldn't notice it. We'd go on about my day, do, and Gary would be like, what happened to your eye? Like, wait, what? Why? And then, it'd last for a day or two and then go along. And then, next week I'd wake up and the other eye would be bloodshot. It was weird. So when we were trying to figure out what was going on, and we thought maybe it was my liver. So she gave me some milk thistle. So.
Okay, that explains it, I think.
Yeah.
And what's the did you call it escabeche?
Escabeche, yeah.
I don't know what that is.
Yeah, that's a Spanish word. I'm not sure what it means, but it's what I learned from my friend, the one with 12 kids. And she would always make jars and jars of, basically she would have whole jalapenos and chunks of carrot, some chunks of cauliflower, a couple of pieces of garlic, chunk of onion, just kind of mishmash, like big, huge whole pieces. Oh, it's so pretty in quart jars. It just looks absolutely gorgeous. But then she'd pop those open and whatever you're eating, you just throw like a huge whole pickled jalapeno on top of your, salad or whatever. I don't know, whatever you're eating. There's nothing that can't be fixed with a little jalapeno. So basically just copying based off of what she said, I made a bunch of jars of those last summer and it's so good.
So you've got quite a few things really that are things that you could pick out and put a little bit on your dinner. You've got that, you've got the pickled beets, you've got the mustard, you've got hot sauce, you've got sort of other things, the tomato corn salsa.
Yeah.
You've got your sauerkraut, obviously. You've got lots of things there that kind of will jazz up a meal and give you something a bit zingy and a bit different to make it more interesting.
Yeah, it's cool because you can take a really simple, quick, fast meal. And I think it was Lexi who pointed out, she said, because I said, oh yeah, sometimes you just do really fast food. And she goes, I noticed that you will have a lot of jars on your table. And I said, oh yeah, I guess that's true. Okay, so I won't ask you about your flower beds. I'm sorry. Don't poison yourself.
I'm not gonna.
The Sowans, though, I did want to ask about that. Yeah. Kids, you need to go upstairs. Do not open that door, please. I don't want the door opening and closing. Go. Okay, then you're going to have to stay out there or go up around the other side of the house. I don't want the door opening and closing. Jacob, go out with her. So I wanted to ask about the Sowans. I know that you are making you made the Boza workshop.
Yeah, that's right.
So I wanted to ask about the Sowans.
Yeah.
If that's something we can learn about as well.
I'm hoping that I'll be able to share that. It's more complicated than the Boza.
What?
Because there's kind of more processes involved. With the Boza, all you do is you cook the millet, you mix it and with some sugar, and you've got the starter, which you make once, and that will last forever. And then you leave it. Whereas the Sowans is more complicated because it uses the crumbs that are off the sides of the rolled oats as they're being rolled.
Right.
And you don't have to use them. If you don't have a way of rolling your own oats, you can buy some oat bran and mix it with some rolled oats and make it like that. But it requires, to put a course together, it just needs me to kind of think, right, okay, well, what if someone's got this, but they haven't got that? If they've got this, but they haven't got that. And I haven't got around to putting the course together yet. But it's such a wonderful drink. And then you end up with the liquid, which is probiotic and wonderful to drink. And you end up with the stuff at the bottom, which is like the most kind of beautifully fermented. I once said on here that it's like eating clouds, the beautifully fermented porridge. And so it's a really wonderful ferment. And it's something we're doing all the time. We've always got either some that we've just done, is on the go, or it's just been put in the fridge. And so I'm hoping that in the future I'll be able to share that process in another course. The fermented oats that are in the fridge that I listed are literally rolled oats with some sourdough starter in and water. And hopefully, my fingers are crossed, by the time this goes out, I've made a series of 3 videos on the fermented porridge oats, and also on the polenta that I've talked about quite a lot in this episode.
Yeah.
And then a polenta bread, which is made directly from that polenta. That's really easy. Yeah. I've made a series of 3 videos of those, which hopefully will be up on my homepage by the time this goes out, which is just me talking through how to do them, basically. And those are things that we do all the time in the kitchen. The stuff you heard of the stuff in my fridge for all of them at the moment. So yeah, hopefully that'll be up soon as well. And then maybe in the future, a Sowans course will be coming too, I hope.
Yeah. Okay, you're making me think. Yeah, those courses are really helpful for all of us, I think, because some of these details that are a little, everybody's starting to learn to get into fermenting and whatnot. But some of these ferments are a little bit more in depth, like you're saying. You need to have the side product and the byproduct and the leftover and the scrap of all these different things. But we need to learn that. And I think as we're getting into the ancestral food kind of lifestyle, we're starting to have more of those things around, and we need to hear about these things and we need to learn about them. So it's really good that you're bringing everyone's attention.
Thank you for saying that. I think Sowans was originally part of the Scottish kind of heritage, and it was made from waste when people took their oats to be rolled at the mill. They got their rolled oats back, and then they got all this waste that was left in the bottom after the rolling. Yeah. And that waste wasn't wasted. They made this product with it. And now I'm kind of rolling my own oats and making another product with what's left over from the rolled oats. Yeah. And it feels like, though I'm not growing my own oats and sending them to a mill to be milled and getting a sack back of the crumbs, it feels really right that I'm doing this and using all of the product and doing it in a way that's traditional. It just makes it a little bit more complicated to explain. So.
Yeah. But we're getting there as we get closer into you have to remember, we're trying to bring back elements, where you're supposed, realistically, you would have generations of, tradition and systems and, the market, high street, all these things should be there backing you up, and we really don't have that. So we're trying to piece together, from the rubble, trying to reassemble this, this kind of lifestyle that we really have no history, familiar to ourselves to go on. We're hearing about things like making beer that we've only ever associated with, like, big factories and, so, for people who are listening to this, then this is all, the recording is already up, and for the patrons can go in and listen to it. But for you and me in the recording timeline, Alison, we're upcoming to when we're going to be doing the live cooking demo. And the Sowans is making me think about something that I made just so I could kind of hold it up in front of the camera and show it as an example. But there's this drink called Haymaker's oat water. And
I've seen that in Nourishing Traditions.
Yeah. Now that you're describing Sowans, I'm thinking, I'll bet this was kind of the descendant of the Sowans, because you basically take the oats and kind of soak them in the water, and you drink that runoff. So I wonder if it's kind of a leftover piece of that, a descended.
Yeah. How long do you leave them in the water for? Do you know?
Okay, well, her recipe said like a day, but I don't, and there was no whey in it. I was not really seeing how it was possible, or what, I didn't add whey to it, but I don't know. Even when we just make a regular, I think you asked on something else about the whey ice cubes.
Yeah.
And
freezer, because we didn't even get to freezers.
Yeah. Part of why I do that is because, whenever I do my dairy making day, then we end up with like a lot of whey all at once. And so I just freeze it in ice cube trays and dump the ice cubes into jars or bags. And then whenever, like if I make a tumbler of a drink, anything, and just grab a whey cube and throw it in there. So no matter what it is, we end up with some whey. So for me to see a drink that doesn't have you automatically add in the whey is almost impossible for me to stop myself, because there's nothing that we drink that doesn't have whey in it. Can you hear my kids yelling? They're right outside the window.
No,
like in the hammock. Okay. All right. So let me ask you a question now. I actually want to ask about the eggs. Do you get the eggs from your farmer or from the farmer's market? Where do you get your eggs from?
Yeah, we get them from the farmer's market. Okay. When we go to the farmer's market on a Thursday night here, there's 3 farmers who are there every week, 2 guys and 1 girl. And I go to each of them. I want to buy something from each of them each time we go. I just want to support everyone. I want to support them all. So great. And 2 of them consistently have eggs. One of them, the woman, the girl, also has massive eggs from ducks and geese eggs, which is huge, which sometimes I treat myself to this huge egg that I have to carry home really carefully because it doesn't fit in any box. But generally, we get our eggs from them every week, along with all of our veg, which is really nice. Yeah.
I was just trying to...
Like you get them from just out the door.
I was trying to picture Rob running down the hill. I was like, how does he do it?
with an egg.
We just get them from the chickens. Okay. That's cool. Yeah. That's cool. That's great.
Nice. We're getting close to time. I've got a few more questions that I'm not going to squeeze in for you.
Okay.
The apple jelly and the apple sauce.
Yeah.
What do you use those for in different kind of, when does the apple sauce come in and when does the apple jelly come in?
Okay, different things. Applesauce is one of my favorite little desserts because you can just heat it up and have a bowl. After dinner, it's really easy. You don't have to make anything, and it's just right there, and it's kind of sweet and cinnamony. And I like mine kind of chunky. I'll make some jars like, oh my goodness, sorry, my alarm just went off, telling me to turn off the drip lines. I forgot that was set. I better change that. Wow, I lost my train of thought. What were we talking about?
You were talking about some really good question. I asked you about your apple sauce and your apple jelly and how you like to eat the sauce all cinnamony and really easily after dinner.
Yeah. And you can add some fat to it if you want by just whipping some cream and put some cream on top. Or you can, I've toasted, you can toast some like leftover oats or like make basically a crumble to put on top. Nice. Like if you take the leftover oatmeal casserole or something, maybe leftover oats that you've cooked and just like crumble them up in the pan, toast them in, then you could put them on top. I don't know. That's what I like it for. And the jelly, I don't know, just put it like on toast or something.
Oh, I see. More like it's because jelly's jam in American English, isn't it?
Oh, wait, what's jelly where you are?
Jelly is a gelatin dessert that is molded into a particular shape, and you have it with ice cream.
Okay, that makes sense because remember I told you about Kitty Bloomfield, and she keeps saying, "Oh, you can make these, fruit jellies," and then she posts a picture of cubes of
that's what
gelatin. Yeah, I guess we just we just call it Jello, which is the brand name of the powdered stuff, even though nobody that I know, I guess nobody's really using the actual Jello, but it's just become such a ubiquitous term. We call it Jello.
I get it now. Okay, so it's apple jam and applesauce. Nice.
Okay, then let me, do I have time to ask you one or two more questions?
Yeah, go on. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, go on.
Okay. All right. So you kind of explained the SWATs and the Sowans. So I won't go on that. And hopefully the link will be up. So I'm hoping that the link is going to be up in time when this goes up so we can tag it in the show notes. Otherwise, I guess we could just say go to ancestralkitchen.com and look and see if it's there when this goes up.
Yeah.
So you did refer to polenta. You said you had ground barley that was fermented.
Yeah.
Okay. And you're going to cook it into polenta. I thought polenta, do you mean you're going to cook? Blah. Isn't polenta corn?
So polenta, I explained this in my video, which I filmed.
Okay.
We have not yet put on my site.
Maybe I should say, go see the film.
No, but polenta is traditionally tied with corn. So everyone thinks of polenta as a corn dish, right? But traditionally here in Italy, obviously where the word polenta comes from, polenta has been made with anything, with chestnut flour, with wheat flour, with anything.
Polenta is just the generic dish.
It's the kind of consistency in the dish. But I mean, most people associate it with corn now. Most times now in Italy, it's been made with corn. But historically, it was made, a dish like that was made with whatever was available. If you lived in Tuscany and you were poor, you had loads of chestnuts later in the year, and then you just grind them up into flour and make polenta with chestnut.
Okay.
So we make this kind of polenta with the barley grains that we buy whole, and then we grind them up in our manual grinder quite coarsely, and then I'll make that up into a polenta on the stove, which will eat hot, and then I'll use the leftovers in a loaf tin to make a bread. Which is such a lovely process because it's a bit like your casseroles in a way, in that you've got leftovers. And so I then chop that polenta bread, as I call it, because I've shoved it in a loaf tin and pushed it down, made it look like a loaf of bread. I slice that, and then we can eat it cold, really, as a 5-minute kind of meal available. Or very often I'll fry it, and so then the outside goes crispy, the inside warms up, so is all soft. And then serve that as the carbohydrate portion of a meal. And if I make a big loaf, we have that, it lasts us at least 4 or 5 days in the fridge afterwards from one cooking session, really.
Wow.
And I love it so much that this is why I wanted to make the videos and put them hopefully up on the homepage.
Yeah.
Because it's such a good process and it's so easy. And I don't think many people are using it. And you don't have to have your own grain grinder. You can buy flour. You can buy flour, barley flour, and just make it with barley flour or oat flour or millet flour or whatever flour you want to make it with.
Yeah. Oh, I can't wait to see that because I don't know that. I would love to learn that.
It's simple. The videos aren't long. So it'll be awesome when they come out to be able to share them.
Yeah. It does seem kind of crazy when you try to teach or talk about, I have so many people who say, can you teach me how to make sauerkraut, or can you, show me? And really when it gets down to it, it's almost feels like, well, what am I going to say? You chop it, you salt it, and you let it sit, but I think, Tara Couture said it really well on Slow Down Farmstead when she said, it's not hard, it's just different. And that's a lot of this is it's just different than what we're used to. And
exactly. It becomes a habit.
Yeah.
Just make it a habit, and then it becomes not different for you.
And so much
something
of
that was different isn't different.
Yeah, exactly. And so many of the things that we went over here are just like rolling, rotational, constantly repeating. Like if I come back and ask you in a year, you're probably going to have a lot of the same things on this list.
I agree.
You know, and in fact, that might be an interesting thing to do. Make a list at a different point in the year and make a list again, you know, next year, because it's some of it sounds really complicated, but at the end of the day, it's just really simple, slow processes. And like you said, so much of history, the carbohydrates or grains were such a primary part of our diet that if we weren't able to add value to them and, you know, make them more digestible and make them more nutritionally bioavailable, it would be quite hard for humans to survive. So we do see a lot of times in history where we have to, basically you're adding nutritional properties to your food with the processing. And now it's weird because in the modern world, food processing strips the nutritional value out of food.
Yeah.
It's the reverse.
Yeah. I remember writing a blog article about 6 months ago called Eat More Processed Food.
Mm-hmm.
And just the definition of processing food that we have now is completely night and day from what processing food was in the past.
Yeah.
And you're right, it was necessary, definitely. And it's necessary to us in our lifestyle now.
Yeah.
For us, you know, personally.
Yeah, that post you did, I do remember that. Yeah, eat more processed food. We always think, you know, eat on processed food. That's kind of like the hue and cry of today. But it's actually, if you look at our list, I'm looking at your list, there's very little on your list that is not processed. I mean, you put radishes, tomatoes, but I know by the time you eat those, they're probably going to be processed in some way.
Yeah, exactly. My eggs will be very quickly processed, but a lot of the fruit and the veg will be processed as well. And I'm going to be making some beet kvass with beetroots, and I'm going to be making fermented carrots with the carrots. You know, it goes on and on. Yeah,
you'll be, those vegetables will become, you know, better for, again, there's this concept of, you know, I can look at the nutritional content of a carrot and say, great, when I eat that, I'm getting all of that. But sometimes we forget, we don't always have the mechanism to extract all the nutrition from these foods. So it may exist in them, you know, like grains is such a great example. They have so much great nutrition in them, but a lot of it is literally not accessible by our gut until it's been processed. And that's a really, really important part of the conversation to not leave out. When we talk about the nutritional values, bioavailability.
We need to end, I think. We've been going on.
Yeah, we're good. I think we're good.
Nice.
I'm good.
Thank you very much for sharing with me what's in your fridge.
Yeah, thank you. Now I just wish that I was coming over for lunch or dinner, but you know, we'll see. We'll see what happens in our future. Okay, well,
indeed.
Thanks again to the patrons who are sponsoring this podcast, making it hit the airwaves and bring it to all of
Thank you to everyone who writes and says how much they're liking.
Oh my word. Yeah. If you are enjoying it, thank you so much for sending in those notes. That means everything. And I really, really appreciate all those just little notes of encouragement. So thank you, everyone.
Yeah, me too.
For that. Okay, Alison, I'll talk to you.
I'll speak to you next time.
Soon. Bye.
Yeah. Bye.
Thank you so much for listening. We'd love to continue the conversation. Come find us on Instagram. Andrea's at Farm and Hearth and Alison's at ancestral_kitchen. Until next time, we both wish you much fun, exploration, and satisfaction in and out of the kitchen.